I'm the Reverend William Levwood. My pronouns are he and him. I'm so delighted that you decided to join us for worship this morning. As we begin our service, if you're here in person with us, I invite you to silence your phones. And whether you're in person or online, to take a deep breath as we center ourselves for worship. We open and welcome to the ancestral people of this land, acknowledging that our church, like all of Burke, rests on the unceded territory of the Manahoac tribe of the Great Sioux Nation. We seek healing and the realization of justice with the people of this land who live on in their descendants, the present-day members of the Monacan Indian Nation, the Patawomic Indian Tribe of Virginia, and the Piscataway Indian Nation. We honor the ancestors as we move toward healing so that all together shall one day know full justice. So we're going to say our chalice lighting words, which you also have a slide for this morning. Together we care in community. Together we grow in spirit. Together we act for justice.
Welcome to Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Judy Robison. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm happy to be your worship associate today. I hope you got a name tag or put your name on your Zoom name tag. If you need help with that, let us know in the chat. If you aren't new to Accotink, look around. Do you see people you haven't met or haven't spoken to in a while? These people like you and want to meet you. Help us live up to our mission to be a welcoming and inclusive spiritual home for all by reaching out and making a connection. By visiting this congregation, newcomers are in a transition moment, and people in transitions are more open to new friendships. This means that your new best friend might be here this morning, and this is your chance to get to them before someone else does. Whether you're a longtime member or a newcomer or something in between, we encourage you to stay for our social hour, online or in person, immediately after the service, and you'll hear more about what's going to happen after the service today. We have some special activities coming up. So we are delighted that you decided to join us today. Welcome, everyone.
Well, that was delightful. Pun intended, because we're starting our month of exploring the theme of delight this month. So we're going to explore that today, and then next week we'll continue to explore it through our flower communion. And that kind of closes out our church year, even though the church year keeps going and going through the summer. It's not like we stop. And the following Sunday is really a wonderful service. We're celebrating Pride Month this month, and on that third Sunday of the month, it's the day before Juneteenth. So our True Accotink Colors, our LGBT plus fellowship and advocacy group, and our Racial Justice Committee are collaborating to bring us a service that looks at Stonewall and Juneteenth and the intersections and interwoven nature of civil rights activism, both for racial justice and for LGBTQ justice. So that's going to be a wonderful service. And then the last Sunday of the month is during our General Assembly. And that Sunday is the closing worship of our General Assembly. And it's open, it's broadcast for all. So we're going to have a watch party here, or you can watch it at home on Zoom. But that's at 11, not at 10. So last Sunday of the month, don't show up here at 10 unless you want to participate in True Accotink Colors' last discussion group on their justice study action for this year. So if you forget or if you want to come to that, you'll still have something to do. And then after the service, Sacred Wheel is doing their, what would it be? Summer solstice gathering and celebration. And then after that, there's a sacred dance event. So you could spend the whole day here discussing, watching the GA service, celebrating the solstice and then doing some sacred dance if you want, or you can come in and out for parts of it. So much going on. Our time for all ages this morning is from the author Kevin Henkes, one of my favorite picture book authors. It's called Summer Song. It's illustrated by Laura Dronzek. The summer sun is a giant flower. And the flowers are like little suns of all different colors. But if I had to pick one color, I'd say summer is green. Green on green on green. Summer is a green song. A song of leaves and trees and weeds and grass. Lots of grass. If there is tall grass in a field, the wind blows, and it sounds like music. So even do the air conditioners, and the fans, and the sprinklers, and the lawnmowers. Most of the time, birds are part of the song, in the air, of the sky, and sometimes rain and thunder are too. If you lie in the grass and you're quiet and patient and lucky, you might hear a bug song, whirring and buzzing and humming. Are there bees? Yes. Grasshoppers? Like in Mary Oliver's poem from last Sunday? Yes. Crickets? Yes. Dragonflies? Yes. And silent butterflies too. And at night there are fireflies sometimes. There's one, and another one, and another one, and another one. They're singing to each other without sound. And when there is fog early in the summer morning, summer is a gray song. And when you go to the beach or a lake, summer is a blue song. And when the sky is blue too. But the green song is still there. If you slow down, I say, and think about it, you can feel the summer song. It's warm, and then hot, and then hotter. Of course, in the shade, it can be cool, and when you play with the hose. But when the days become shorter and the nights come earlier, then the song changes. It's as if summer gets bored and wants to try something new, something different. The song is turning. It's turning into fall.
Our reading today is titled From Blossoms by Li-Young Lee. From blossoms comes this brown paper bag of peaches we bought from the boy at the bend in the road where we turned toward the signs painted peaches. From laden boughs, from hands, from sweet fellowship in the bins, comes nectar at the roadside. Succulent peaches we devour, dusty skin and all, comes the familiar dust of summer, dust we eat. Oh, to take what we love inside, to carry within us an orchard, to eat not only the skin, but the shade, not only the sugar, but the days, to hold the fruit in our hands, adore it, then bite into the round jubilance of peach. There are days we live as if death were nowhere in the background, to live from joy to joy to joy, from wing to wing, from blossom to impossible blossom, to sweet, impossible blossom.
And we share our delights with each other. I'm reminded that the John Denver that we listened to today reminds me how much my mother loves the music of John Denver and how she's shared that delight with me. Reminds me also that Summer Song, The Time for All Ages Today, is one of the books that was donated to Halley Elementary, bought with a donation that my family made on behalf of my wife's mother, who passed nearly a year ago. So we carry these orchards within us, and we continue to share the delights. In preparing to talk about delight today, I read a lot of poems. Poems about delight and pleasure and gratitude. Poems about peaches and water, figs and flowers. In fact, since Flower Community is next Sunday, I was reading Hanif Abdurraqib's series of poems that all share the same title. How can Black people talk about flowers at a time like this? I was wondering if there was a way to feature one of those poems in the Flower Communion service, and I didn't find a way, at least not this year. I also read Young Lee's poem about peaches that you just heard, that resplendent poem that's really worthy of its own sermon that would just attempt to exegete a small bit of its aching, echoing wisdom so as to share some of its nourishment and nutrients of life teaching with you, as I attempt to do each and every Sunday, hoping there is some morsel that will help you in your journey, help you as you journey through the lovely, lonely stretches of each week, filled to overflowing as you are, I know, filled to overflowing with longing so often just out of reach. What stood out or rose up or reached toward the sun like a flower that does all of these at once is how closely intertwined are death and delight, how they share space in the same bouquet. Death, like the purple asters that accentuate the bright yellow sunlight in a corona of petals that is the goldenrod of delight. After I wrote that, I looked up goldenrod on the internet and realized that corona is probably not the right word, despite my desire to evoke sunlight in that previous sentence, as goldenrod petals arrange themselves in clumps that often, to me, resemble Christmas trees, or what Christmas trees would resemble if conifers were to change the color of their foliage to golden sunlight every fall. Which reminds me that there is something fleeting about delight that is decidedly not evergreen. This is part of delight, after all, integral to it, that there is all this beauty fading into the earth, as the Talmud describes it, describes life and the omnipresence, not of God, but of death in the midst of life. The dust on the peaches Young Lee delights in, the minute roughness of dust mixing with roughness of the tiny hairs on a peach's skin, as death mixes with vibrant life every day in our lives, in the tastes in our mouths. From dust you are, and from dust you shall return. I think if I were to define delight, I would say, delight is that thing that makes us say, look, look, there, right over there. Do you see it? Did you see the bird fly across the sky? The turtle before it ducked beneath the algal blooms? The owl as it briefly flashed in flight before the moon? The sweetness of childhood before it gives way to adolescent angst? And the quiet despair that lurks in the bright light of adulthood? Quiet despair, quietly stalking us. Look, here, now. See it, know it, feel it. All this beauty fading into earth. That little tinkle that won't be there later. All this beauty fading into the earth. Don't you dare take it for granted. It's here, always and all around. Delight is lurking. Delight, too. Like quiet despair, delight, too, is stalking us. Or should I say, beckoning to us, calling quietly, coyly even, like a lover, courting us, reminding us to delight while we still can, before the colors change and the leaves fall to the ground, before the petals wilt and blanket the kitchen table with white or maroon, golden or butter yellow, iridescent purple or bright red like a pop of flavor from a berry on our tongues. If I were to define delight, I would say delight is the thing that makes us say, look, look. That makes us say, taste, taste. That implores us to listen and to hear, to really hear, to touch and to feel, to listen and really hear the birdsong in the air, to listen and really hear each other, how our songs vibrate in the air between us, to touch and really feel, to feel the weight of it all. Sometimes it's comfortingly heavy, like a weighted blanket or a blanket of snow, a hand strongly holding ours as we sob, as we cry out in heartbreaking sorrow, or cry out overwhelmed by heartbreaking delight. To feel the weight of it all, sometimes so light we can miss it if we're not careful. The featherweight of a child's hand in ours as we sing them to sleep. In a ritual we repeat each and every night, so routine until it isn't. A burden even at times, despite its lightness, and then such a loss when it disappears from our life, fades imperceptibly and all at once. Here is the other thing that I want to say about delight. Delight is a thing we share, is a sharing. So look, listen, taste, touch, feel. All this beauty, it's here always and all around, in every moment and in every place, in the sunshine and in the shade, in every circumstance. No matter how terrifying or terrible or toxic, no matter how slowly or quickly this beauty is fading back into the earth. It's here always and all around. So look, listen, taste, touch, feel, share in it, share it and share in it. Just as each of those one-word sentences are imperatives. Look, listen, taste, touch, feel. Let delight command your attention. And when you see, hear, touch, taste, smell, feel it. Share it. Share it freely and generously. Back in my modern dance days, we would sometimes take silent walks as an awareness exercise, and we would frame delightful things for each other if we saw them. We would just be walking next to someone and we would get their attention and point and put up a little frame to show the delightful thing that we had seen. Share delight and share it generously. That's the story of figs that poet Ross Gay shares in his poems about figs. The story of water he shares in his poem about water. The poet discovering the figs, the owner of the fig tree inviting him to gather and eat as many figs as he can, sharing the delight. And then the small crowd that gathered to gather the figs, the tall poet reaching up to bring down the fruit to share with the gathered, again sharing delight. The man on the way to work who has to jump twice to reach his fig and shares his delight by smiling and calling to the fig, Ross Gay tells us, cooing really, come here, baby, and blowing a kiss to the mother tree in gratitude. The mother fig tree that wasn't supposed to thrive this far north, but does and shares her delight with us. The immigrant in the gathering, who one could say was never meant to survive, much less thrive here in this conquered land, but nonetheless, like that mother fig tree, so far north has survived and even thrives, that immigrant sharing his delight. The sharing of water, a delight when you're thirsty, or even a necessity perhaps, a life-giving necessity. For example, when you're an immigrant crossing a border from desert into desert, and you're not meant to enter this land, not meant to share your delight or share in the delight of this land, when all this beauty fading into the earth could mean your life or your child's life, fading into the earth for lack of this small, necessary delight of water, cupped in your hands as it's brought to your desperately dry lips, your parched throat, because someone illegally left water for you out in that desert. Or sharing a delight more ordinary like the poet does, the poet in the garden remembering his first drink of water from cupped hands, a sharing of delight from his grandfather. We carry orchards inside of us, a sharing of delight from his grandfather as together they visited a family graveyard, the grandfather tending the flowers for the dead and seeing the child's thirst, teaching his grandchild to drink water from his hands, from the faucet, from the hose, and then from his hands as together they water the flowers. And we wonder, how can Black people talk about flowers at a time like this? How can any of us not talk about flowers at a time like this? How can any of us neglect to share with each other, to share in the sorrows always all around us, the sorrow of all the many beauties fading back into the earth, the sorrow that becomes delight, the delight that becomes sorrow, and around and round. How can any of us not talk about flowers at a time like this? At the end of Ross Gay's 12-page poem, in his book of poetry, The Unabashed, Unabashed Gratitude, his book of Unabashed Gratitudes, he shares at the end of that 12-page poem, which is much shorter, mind you, than his book-length single-sentence poem, which I highly recommend. His 12-page poem cataloging gratitudes and delights, at the end, he thanks, and not for the first time, the reader for sticking with it through the lengthy, rambling journey of the poem. Thanks the reader with these words. And thank you again for hanging tight, dear friend. I know I can be long-winded sometimes. I want so badly to rub the sponge of gratitude over every last thing, including you, which, yes, awkward. The suds in your ear and armpit, the little sparkling gems slipping into your eye. Soon it will be over. Which is precisely what the child in my dreams said, holding my hand, pointing at the roiling sea and sky. hurtling our way like so many buffalo, who said, "It's worse than we think, and sooner." To whom I said, "No, duh, child in my dreams. What do you think this singing and shuddering is? What this screaming and reaching and dancing and crying is other than loving what every second goes away?" Reader, goodbye is what I mean to say, and thank you every day. To rub the sponge of gratitude, of delight over every last thing. Yes, yes, I say. So let the fact that all this beauty is fading into the earth, that death and life, that sorrow and delight are so intricately woven together, and let us share our delight with each other. Because at a time like this, with fires raging and flooding all over the world, with climate change threatening us, with school shootings and all the hard things, how can anyone not talk about flowers at a time like this? So may it be so. May we revel in the delight that is all around us, and may we share it with each other. Amen, 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 and blessed be.
As we extinguish our chalice, I invite you to join me now in our community blessing with these words of David Bumbaugh. This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences and beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time, death, and the space between the stars. We pause now in silent witness to that unity.
So now that we've been nourished and nurtured by this welcoming and ever more inclusive spiritual home, may we be inspired to go out in the world and share our values and to enjoy the Pride picnic.